China and India are two countries that in recent months have felt the full impact of the hardline policies of the current US administration under Donald Trump, and are now preparing a counterstrike that, according to analysts, could reshape the global architecture of world trade. After Trump imposed higher tariffs on India over its large-scale purchases of Russian oil, New Delhi sharply reduced its imports, hoping that the White House would reciprocate by lifting restrictions. However, several months have passed and the tariffs remain in place, despite repeated requests from Narendra Modi's government. Moreover, following Washington's updated package of sanctions against Russia, India found itself in an even more difficult situation. Direct purchases are now blocked, and any attempt to bypass the restrictions risks new penalties from the US. But Modi, according to sources close to his cabinet, has grown tired of playing by Washington's rules, which, as many in New Delhi believe, change every time it benefits the US. In recent weeks, the Indian Prime Minister has taken a step that neither the White House nor the State Department expected. Secretly and without any official statements, India began coordinating with China, its longtime rival and geopolitical opponent, to jointly establish a system for purchasing Russian oil through a chain of intermediaries, using the same logistical loopholes that China has been employing for years to circumvent American sanctions on Iran. According to respected outlets such as the Financial Times, Nikkei Asia, and China's Caixin, negotiations between Indian and Chinese oil traders have been taking place over the past 6 weeks in Dubai and Singapore. The outcome of these meetings has been shocking for Washington. India and China are effectively launching a joint shadow energy network in which oil will be declared as raw material of mixed origin, routed through several jurisdictions, and then sent for processing without leaving any trace leading back to Russia. Sources in India's Ministry of External Affairs say that Modi personally insisted not only on maintaining Russian oil imports, but on increasing their volume, using China as the main logistical partner. Such a move would have been unthinkable just a year ago, but Trump's harsh measures have pushed the two largest economies in Asia to act together despite territorial disputes and military clashes in the Ladakh region. Most importantly, New Delhi is now openly signaling, though not yet publicly, that India refuses to play the role of America's junior partner that Washington expects of it within the Indo-Pacific strategy. Within the Indian bureaucratic establishment, this new line is being called the Doctrine of Sovereign Energy, an attempt to show that India will act in its own interests, even when those interests contradict the policies of the White House. Trump, in response, remains silent, and that silence, experts say, is far more dangerous than any loud tweet. According to Politico, the president's advisors are divided. Some urge easing the pressure to avoid losing India, which the US sees as a key counterbalance to China. The other half of the administration calls for tougher measures, including secondary sanctions against Indian companies participating in gray schemes with Russia. And while there is no consensus within the White House, India and China are doing exactly what Washington feared most, aligning their energy interests. Against this backdrop, global geopolitics is becoming even more unstable as economic maneuvering in Asia coincides with rising tensions in the Pacific. In recent weeks, a dangerous escalation has seriously alarmed the Pentagon and America's allies. Chinese warships have begun approaching US carrier strike groups at minimal permissible distances, sometimes just a few hundred meters, deliberately crossing their paths and forcing US Navy crews to alter course to avoid collisions. In a report by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, such maneuvers are already being described as shadow tactics, when a Chinese vessel maintains a distance so close that it creates physical pressure while formally remaining within the bounds of international law. According to intelligence officers, Beijing is effectively testing the US response, rehearsing scenarios for containing and blocking aircraft carriers under real conditions. Each of these incidents is recorded on camera and almost instantly broadcast by Chinese state media, which present them as proof that China is not yielding to the United States in naval operations. But the most important point is the timing of these provocations, which coincides with China's accelerated preparations for a potential blockade or seizure of Taiwan. Satellite images published by Jane's Defense Weekly show an increase in amphibious ships, construction of logistical facilities, temporary fuel depots, and the expansion of military infrastructure in Fujian province, directly across from the Taiwan Strait. All of this forms a single coherent pattern. Beijing is acting simultaneously on economic, political, and military fronts, and every element of this pressure is synchronized. And now, unexpectedly, India is joining this strategy, a country long considered the democratic counterbalance to Chinese influence. Yet it was Trump's sanctions that became the point where New Delhi decided to step out from under US oversight and begin cooperating with the very actor Washington viewed as its main systemic rival. According to Reuters sources in India's oil sector, the first shipments of Russian crude, processed through shadow traders, are already heading toward Indian ports. The irony is that the scheme the US tried to dismantle by pressuring China has now become bilateral and far more resilient for Washington. The choice is extremely difficult. If it imposes sanctions on India, the US risks losing one of its last major allies in Asia. If it eases the pressure, Trump will effectively admit that his sanctions policy has failed. According to the Brookings Institution, the White House now finds itself in a position where any decision carries strategic damage. Meanwhile, Modi, according to Indian insiders, is ready to go even further, considering joint energy hubs with China, switching to payments in rupees and yuan, expanding sub-Indian oil corridors, and even creating an alternative insurance system for tankers independent of Western banks. All this is part of a new course already being called the post-America era in India, one that could overturn the entire system of global energy trade. India and China, both hurt by Washington's actions, are responding asymmetrically, but with extraordinary effectiveness. And the most troubling thing for the US is that this counterstrike is unfolding quietly, precisely, almost invisibly, yet it undermines the very foundation of American influence in the region. If the situation continues to develop in this way, by the end of the year, Asia could see the emergence of a new powerful economic bloc, united by its aversion to sanctions and its determination to play by its own rules. And for the first time in decades, Washington risks finding itself in the position of a player confronted with a fait accompli. Inside the White House, insiders report growing panic. But outwardly, the administration continues to pretend that the situation remains under control. Against this backdrop, Modi is gaining a reputation across Asia as the leader who, for the first time in history, has dared to challenge the United States not for the sake of China or Russia, but for India itself. And it is precisely this factor that makes the new Beijing-New Delhi coalition especially dangerous for America, as the two largest Asian powers now act not as enemies, but as pragmatic partners united by resistance to Trump's pressure.